Here we have a petrol tap, or a Petcock, from a Suzuki GT550J. They're basically the same as the 750 and the 380. They all operate on the same principle. And basically I'll show you a couple of things. One is how it works, and secondly how to service it and get it working again, because they do deteriorate with age. So the first thing, how it works. Right, there's a lever on the front there. There's on, there's reserve, and there's prime. Now with the on, it's working the petrol in the tank. This slots into the petrol tank. When the petrol gets down below this level here, no petrol is obviously going through. So when you turn to reserve, which is the middle one, the petrol then goes down this hole here. On this hasn't got one, but on your tap it'll have a filter in there as well. This is designed to stop bits of rust and any other crap that's in the tank getting down the pipe. So when it's on reserve, it all goes down here. There's a rubber seal that goes round here to seal the tap to the tank. That can be replaced. They still can be bought. So here we go then. So when it's on, the petrol's going down the pipe there. Right. To get into the tap itself, we just take out the two screws. There's one at the top there, and there's one at the bottom there. Two Phillips screws. So the first to come off is the plate over the top. Then there's a big circular spring which is made out of steel, which holds this tap pressed against a rubber seal which is inside, as you can see there. So that's the spring that holds it in. As you can see on there, there's a little gap, and as you turn it, this little gap on the tap itself, on the lever, connects the two holes. So therefore you've got on, reserve, prime. When it's on prime, the vacuum or the diaphragm on the back is not operational. The petrol just goes straight down through the prime and straight down, which is alright in some certain situations. But anyway, so when it's on, it connects up two holes, and the petrol just feeds between the two, as you can see there. Inside there's a rubber washer or seal. Now this seal is replaceable, you can get them still. You need to check you get the right one, because they did change from the early models to the later models. Consists of a thick rubber washer which fits over the four raised holes on the petrol feed. Each hole has got a raised lip around the outside, and what happens is that presses against this smooth face of this and seals the petrol, so it's just going down the two holes that you want. Now the problem with these are the petrol deteriorates them, they go hard, and also the surface of the petrol tap itself, the lever, this can become coarse and rough, and what happens is that that deteriorates and rubs on there. It's almost like sandpaper, it smooths it out. But these can be replaced quite easily. Just make sure you get the right one. So that goes on there. There's the tap, the lever, the spring goes on, and then the plate that holds it all in place goes back on the top. I'll just put that back on for a short time. Right, the next thing we go to is the float bowl itself, which is on the bottom. There is a nut shape on the bottom there. Be very careful with these. They can snap if you put too much pressure on them. So the float bowl unscrews as normal and comes out you can see by looking at the inside of that, that's how it goes. That's what the petrol does to it over years. Inside there's an O-ring. This acts as a seal to the bottom of the bowl, and then there's this funny little filter thing here. These are all replaceable, but that one looks okay, if not a bit yellow, but it still works, and the net's still there. So that goes in first on there with the pins sticking out, then the O-ring, and then we just tighten that up. Not too tight, because it's an O-ring and you might crush it and it will start leaking. So here we have the 3 outlet holes. That's on this is a 550J, so it has 3 separate petrol pipes going to 3 separate carburetors. So going to the back, this is the diaphragm. Now this is the bit that causes all the trouble on these things. What happens is it sticks, or it doesn't open when it shouldn't, or it stays open when it shouldn't. But anyway, there's 5 screws on the back. You just need to unscrew them all. This here is it's an air pipe. It's nothing to do with petrol. This is the vacuum pipe. There is a petrol sized pipe that comes off it, which fits to the central carburetor. So when the engine's running, this actually has a gentle sucking action, very, very minute sucking action, sucking on here. There's no petrol, it's just air sucking that, and it's called the vacuum pipe. So when the engine's running and the engine's sucking air through the air cleaner, it's also sucking on this little pipe here. So carefully take the top off, and you'll see there's a little spring inside. Make sure you don't lose that, it's very important. So here we have the diaphragm. Now this is a very, very thin piece of rubber. You have to be very careful with it, because if it punctures it won't work. Right? A couple of things to note. Sometimes they stick, you just gently have to try and lever them up. So when you take it out, you'll see inside there's the pipe that goes into the actual fuel hole, and this is the on-off switch effectively. That needs to be smooth and clean inside there. There's also a very small hole here. That's the vent that is used to suck the diaphragm, so that's important, so we'll come to that in a bit. Right, the diaphragm's made up of a very thin piece of rubber. The back one hasn't got a hole in it at all, and what happens is when it's all bolted up tight, when the engine's running, the carburetor actually sucks this piece of rubber, pulls it towards it, and as you can see, on the other side there's another piece of rubber, very, very thin and very delicate. You have to be very careful with it, and there's an O-ring on the end there. That fits into there like that. And what happens is, while the engine's running, this piston is withdrawn backwards and it opens the petrol in there. That O-ring there pulls back and lets the petrol flow down and into the petrol tap itself. So you can see the problem. If this is sticking in the bore here, no petrol flows through. So that's basically how it works. There's a small hole in this front one. When you put it back together, I'll show you in a bit, you have to make sure that hole is there. Okay, so to service, these are obtainable, these diaphragms, but they cost a fortune. To service this, when you've got it apart, be very, very careful. Clean in there with carb cleaner completely, scrub it all out. Now I've got a polishing brush just about that size, and I gently polish it. Now be careful not to take too much off in there, or what you'll end up with is a hole bigger than this, bigger than your piston, so it'll leak all the time. The idea is that this goes in there and stocks it, but I just polish it gently with a bit of a polishing mop that I've got. That makes that nice and smooth basically, so it doesn't stick. Check the integrity of your O-ring here. Just make sure, it seems most of them are okay, but they just stick in the board. But give all this a good clean with carb cleaner and get all the gump off of it. Now this rubber is it's very, very delicate, but what I did is I used some silicone grease to just take all the smears off it and all the smudges and everything. And I think it also helps its flexibility. So when you put it back together, just as I say, remember, I also put a bit of silicone grease around the piston itself so it slides in and out on the bore. So when you put it back together, make sure this hole there is over the vent hole. And there's a vent hole there as well, so that has to go in like that. Clean the back one as well with a bit of silicone grease. I used the stuff they gave me with an RI helmet. It's like a little bottle that's got silicone grease in it. Now the spring, that pushes down and keeps the pump closed. What I did and what I do is just gently, not too much, just extend it a little bit so it's putting more pressure on here. And then all you do, again, there's the little hole there. You have to make sure that's in the same place as again, and put your little spring on, put it all back together. Obviously you'll be doing put the whole 5 screws in nice and tight, just so it holds it all together. That's it. So hopefully now the diaphragm, when that's being sucked, will come in and out nice and smoothly. Okay, going back, obviously when you get to your float bowl you need to clean all that out. Make sure everything's nice and clean and pucker. The front, what I do is take the front off again, the spring. The face of this tap here, you get either a bit of wet and very, very fine wet and dry to make this nice and smooth, because as I say, they do get petrol infected and they're a bit rough and they wear out this rubber very, very quickly. I've got a polishing wheel, so I actually polish mine on the polishing wheel just so it's nice and smooth and shiny. Replace your rubber on the inside. Now some of the later taps also had another rubber ring. I think it's called a V ring that goes on the outside, but basically they're all the same. So just do all that, put it all back together, screw it up, and the pressure of that pushing down will seal the tap. And with that you should have no problems at all. I finish off, I've got a cleaner which I put it in and give it a good clean on the outside and get everything nice and shiny. Okay, thanks for listening.